Price and output determination under monopoly. We have already completed perfect market presentation where we spoke about the firm and industry and the price determination, and also how the output is determined under under perfect competition. We now move into monopoly. A monopoly is a market structure in which there is a single seller, there are no close substitutes for the commodity it produces, and there are barriers to entry to firms. Now, this is the definition given by Coatsianis, and the other one is the monopolist is a market and completely controls. Monopoly is the market because there's just one, and completely controls the amount of output offered for, say, Pindick, Rubinfield, and Mehta. Now, we need to understand here what gives rise to monopoly. How does a monopoly come into being? One of the reasons that a monopoly comes into being is because of exclusive ownership of the raw material used in the production of that particular good. Example we usually give that is of De Beers, where it's a diamond company, and the company in South Africa has a monopoly over the supply of diamonds. So if there is any resource which has got an exclusive ownership to a right to a firm, then that becomes monopoly. The second reason can be exclusive knowledge. It could be because of the knowledge in the production or product processes. In that case also there is the knowledge itself can be a reason for monopoly. Nobody else knows that particular area of knowledge. It could also happen because there are special activities like that of the doctors, the dentists, the mechanics in local areas. There also we can have monopoly. Monopoly is not necessary that it should happen only in large firms. It can happen even in a geographical area that there is only one supplier of a particular good, or there is only one doctor in that particular region, or there is only one mechanic for a particular kind of a car. Now, these also gives monopoly power to that particular service provider or to the product provider. It can also happen because of patent rights that the government may grant an inventor of a product, and it may have full control of the product till the time the patent is in vogue. Patents are permission for a design that the government may give to a designer. We can also find that monopoly can emerge because of government licensing, where the government may permit domestic companies or foreign companies to exclude or to include certain kinds of trade. For example, only a particular firm can import. In that case, the firm becomes a monopolist. So these kind of government licenses also can give rise to monopoly. We also find sometimes that the size of the market is such that it cannot accommodate two firms to operate. For example, in the case of electricity, it is not possible that two firms can operate because of the size, and it cannot have a market for sharing it between two firms. There is also a limit pricing policy that firms may follow. A monopolist may also follow a limit pricing policy, in which case that firm may have spent on heavy advertising. It can continuously upgrade the products of the firm, in which case the product differences that it makes every time, it is very difficult for a new firm to enter and compete with that particular firm. In such case also monopoly power can emerge. Now, what happens to the concept of firm and industry? Under perfect competition, we saw that there are firms and there is an industry, and the firms take to what the industry dictates to the firms in terms of the prices. However, in the case of monopoly, we will understand that there are no firms and industry. There's only one. The firm itself is the industry. Therefore, we do not study the firm and industry differently. Now, what is the demand curve? The demand curve for the firm constitutes the demand curve of the industry. There's only one firm, and that firm also is the industry. So there's only one demand curve for the entire monopolist. And we also find that the demand curve is the average revenue curve for the company, because that is the price at which it sells its produce in the market. And the average revenue curve is a downward sloping curve. When we did that chapter on revenue, I have explained two kinds of revenue curves, one in the perfect market and one in the imperfect market. So it will do good to read or listen to watch that video once again on the chapter on revenue, because that is the idea that we are using here. Here we get a downward sloping revenue curves. And a monopolist is faced with two decisions: setting the price or setting the output, but he cannot do both. What does that mean? If the monopolist fixes the price at very high levels, then the consumers will fix the output that will be purchased by the consumers. On the other hand, if the firm has decided the output to be of this kind, then the consumers will decide at what price they will buy the product. However, the monopolist cannot fix both the price and the output. Let us look at the average revenue and marginal revenue of a monopolist. Now, the average revenue and marginal revenue both are downward sloping, and we can understand that the monopolist can sell more units of a commodity when the prices are falling. So at reduced prices, he can sell more. That is the reason why you're finding the AR curve and the MR curve falling. And also, since there are no substitutes for the commodity, it has got a relatively inelastic demand curve. So the marginal revenue that it is getting by selling more units is lesser than the average revenue. Again, please read back watch the video on revenue, because these examples are given there along with a table. Then the marginal revenue will be below the AR revenue curve, and at OQ output, the marginal revenue is at OQ, AR is PQ and MR is MQ. So these are the two important things that you need to do. It is downward sloping curve, unlike the perfect market, and two, the MR curve is below the average revenue curve. AR is below the MR is below the AR curve. Now let's try and understand the conditions of equilibrium of a monopolist. The rules of the conditions of equilibrium, when we did the presentation on concepts of equilibrium, again, visit to that video will be a good idea, so that you can easily connect to the idea that I'm speaking now. It is not worthwhile to explain all of that again here. Now, the first condition is MC must be equal to MR. We have used the same condition in the determination of equilibrium under perfect market as well. The second order condition was that MC must cut MR from below. So two conditions: MC must be equal to MR and MC must cut MR from below. So if the demand for the product is high, two choices. What can the firm do if the demand for the product is high? Two choices. It can either raise the output or raise the price. But in the short run, we know that output cannot be raised unless the firm has got stocks of the commodity, or the only possibility is that it will raise the price. Short run equilibrium of the monopolist. Now, this diagram can look a little daunting, but it is not really, because you've already studied this form of a diagram in the earlier presentation in perfect market. So what have we got in this diagram? There are two curves, which is the AR curve and the MR curve, and both are downward sloping, though steeper. Now, having known the AR and MR curve, we want to now fix up the level of output. How do we fix the level of output? I have explained it again. Here it is, we introduce the MC curve. That is all that needs to be done. When you introduce the MC curve, the point where the MC curve is intersecting the MR curve, that gives you the output. So your output is fixed and at OB. OB is when MC is equal to MR and MC is cutting MR from below. OB is fixed. Now, once the output is fixed. Next, as we have to find out now whether the firm is getting profit or loss or supernormal profit. Now, this monopolist has got every possibility to raise the price, and he's a price maker. He's not the price taker, because he decides what should be the price of the product if he chooses to do that, and leave the output to be decided by the market. Now, price, that is the AR, is higher than the, we have now to introduce the average cost curve. So when we are introducing the average cost curve, we have to see where is the price for that product, what is the revenue that the firm is getting. In this particular diagram, what you can see is at the level OB as output, we stretch that line up to the average revenue curve. Output line, no other intersection is relevant here. It is only the output curve. The output curve line has to be extended to the AR curve. So at AR, when it touches the AR curve, that is the price of the product. So the price is fixed at the point where the AR curve, for the output, the AR curve is touched. Then after that, what we are seeing is the difference between AR curve and AC curve. What is the difference between AC and AR? That gives us the volume of profit. In this particular case, the AR curve is above the AC curve, which logic tells you that when the cost of production is lower than the average revenue, the firm is necessarily making profit. So the profit area for this particular quantity OB, like how we have done in the perfect market, the area is FETN. So FETN is the difference between AR and AC curve for 1 unit multiplied by the total unit, that is OB. So FETN is the total profit for the firm, simply because the average cost curve is below the average revenue curve. So the firm in the short run can make supernormal profit. Now, I just thought I will help you how to draw the diagram, because I have always seen students getting confused with drawing this particular diagram, and therefore they leave out this subject because they think it's a very difficult diagram. That is why I have just written step by step how you can draw the diagram, and therefore understand the idea of monopoly, price and profit. First is MC cuts MR from below at point K, and output is decided at OB. That is clear. MC cuts MR from below and price output is decided at OB. Next, extend the output line to the AR curve touching the point T. Once it touches the point T, extend it towards the vertical axis to get the price at OE. Once that is done, all you need to do is introduce the, to identify the profit, you have to introduce a short run average cost curve. So once you have introduced a short run average cost curve, then from that short run average cost curve, extend the dotted line BN to AR. So BN is at per unit profit curve, so per unit cost curve. So that cost curve, extend it to the line AR. So when you extend it to the line AR, we are getting profit per unit as TN. So you can see this diagram. I have given the steps, you can very easily understand it. Sit for a minute, draw this diagram on your own, practice the diagram, you will get the logic of it. It is not at all difficult, it is just that you need to follow the method by which it is drawn. Don't just look for a point of intersection and draw the line. There's a logic. When the marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue only, output. From that output, extend it to the AR curve. From the AR curve, extend it to the vertical axis. You get the price. The distance between the AC curve and the AR curve is per unit profit. So average cost of producing OB unit is how much? OBNF is the average unit of producing it. The total, the lower area is the cost of producing the output OB. Then AR minus AC. So if you have to reduce the AC minus the AC, you get the profit per unit. So extend both the AC and AR curve to your vertical axis, and that small rectangle that you have got, EFTN, is the profit. So TN per unit profit multiplied by the total output OB gives you the total profit for the firm. So take a minute, take a pencil, draw the curve, see how the curve is drawn. You will understand that. It is not difficult at all. It is just that it looks very complicated, but there is good logic to draw this diagram. So what happens to the firm in the short run? Can it make a loss? Yes, it can make a loss also in the short run. And now you understand how to make a loss making diagram. All you need to do is take the AC curve away from where it was to put it above the AR curve. So once you put the AC curve above the AR curve, it immediately means the cost of production is greater than the revenue that the firm gets. So AC curve is above AR curve. So the output is OB, MC equal to MR. Total cost of producing output is OBHE. Now you see the output, the cost of production is much higher than what we did earlier. Now it has gone beyond the average revenue curve. And then we get the loss per unit. That is the difference between the average revenue and the average cost. That is KH. So KH is the difference between AR and AC, and the total loss for the firm is EGKH. That is in red I have written for you. EGKH is the total loss for the firm. So if the firm is not able to bear the loss in the short period and it exceeds its fixed cost, then the firm will close down. Usually monopolists, they do manage to get over the time, but this is a condition that it will shut down only if the losses exceed its fixed cost. And does the monopolist firm also share normal profit? Yes, normal profit is much possible. It's a very simple diagram. By doing the two diagrams that you just did, the third diagram is very easy. All you need to do is put the average cost curve as tangent to the average revenue curve, and at that point you also get your output because MC is equal to MR. Extend it to the point of tangency for the AC to AR and draw it to the left, you get the price, and you can see that the firm is just making normal profit. So that is a condition where the firm makes normal profit. Cost is CV, revenue is CV. So monopoly is in equilibrium because a single firm constitutes the whole industry. No need for a separate study of firm and industry under monopoly. So there's no need to distinguish between short run and long run cost curve. Usually the short run cost curve the same way they will the firm will continue to do it in the long run revenue curve. Main aim of a monopolist is to make the maximum profit. And will the firm continue to survive in the long run? That's a prediction that Kotsianis explains in her book. It is a prediction. A firm may expand output, a firm may expand plant, use existing plant to any level to maximize profit. Possibility. Sometimes they may not do that. There's a prediction that Anna Kotsianis talks in her book. Then it is not necessary to reach optimal scale. A monopolist firm can always work below the optimal scale, not necessarily that it uses all of the efficient ways of using resources. It reaches a minimum point on the LSE. So it is not necessary that it should reach the minimum point. It can continue to operate even before the minimum point on LSE is reached. There is no guarantee that the firm will use existing plant to the optimum. So plant need not use all its resources to the optimum. Maybe whatever it wants to, if it is getting the profit that it has planned for itself, then that much only the firm will produce, not necessarily that all of what it can produce actually is produced. May continue to earn supernormal profit in the long run. So it could happen like that. Or the market demand And finally, the market demand is the only factor here. The market demand will decide the change in plant size and degree of plant utilization. If the market demand has reduced, then the plant will start producing less of it. If the market demand has increased and it wants to earn more in that market, then it can expand into that market. And what are the predictions and what is the response to these predictions? Shift in demand, increase in output. If there is a shift in demand, the firm may increase its output, may sell at same, higher or lower price depending upon the shift in the elasticity of demand. It's totally left to the firm. The firm is in full control of the profit and the output that it wants to decide. Shift in cost, it may not change output in the short or long run. Only if the fixed cost wipes out the abnormal profit, then it will reduce normal profits, and in that case, the firm will have to go out of business. So these are the possible responses to the predictions that we just made. And if the government imposes a tax, it is possible the monopolist will bear some of the tax burden just to stay in profit, because it will cover up the tax burden by increasing the price of its produce. And it is certain that if a monopolist incurs losses, the firm will exit. So monopoly is a very peculiar situation where there is only one seller for that product. We can see it in many public enterprises that we know. The factory that produces HAL, for example, the aircraft building factory that we know is a monopoly because there's a state monopoly. The government has taken up the firm, and only the government can make aircraft. So that is a monopoly like that. The coach factories that we have, the railway engine factories. So these are kind of examples of where the monopoly, there is a government monopoly, and a private monopoly can exist for smaller products in the country, for regions, for services. We can experience monopoly. So the next lesson we shall see what are the powers of monopoly in fixing the prices, and how does a monopoly fix that price, which we shall understand as price discrimination. Thank you. I hope you're making use of these lessons, and I have tried to keep it as simple as possible for you, so that by watching this video, you get an idea about the subject, and then if you read your textbook, you will understand the subject well. Often it becomes very daunting to a fresher to learn all these things at one go from a subject, so I'm just presenting it for you. Thank you very much.